Good morning, everyone. This is Victor Dominguez, Executive Director of Business Performance USA. This is another webinar series we're running today. And our host and presenter is Milton Course, a good friend, excellent colleague, and we're happy to have everyone here with us today to discuss our topic, 5 leadership roles for every type of leader. The goal here is high-performance leadership that generates results. And we're going to be talking about the key roles of these effective leaders and talking to our audience about how to identify these roles within your organization and within yourself, most importantly, as well. So a couple of quick notes. Business Performance USA is a nonprofit organization. We're really just a bunch of executive consultants, business leaders who believe we should be giving back to our communities. We help folks with their career development. We help organizations with their people development, process improvement, and performance management. That's our moniker. And we always ask you just to reach out to us. We're just, frankly, just like the folks in our audience today, which is a very diverse audience. We have folks from healthcare, practitioner services, medical devices, technology, finance. We've got nonprofits here today. We've got faith-based organizations here today, a really wide range of people. But the good news is we're talking about human character, nature, talents, and expertise. And those are transferable to every organization and every industry. So we all have a lot in common that as good people, we want to do the very best we can and live up to our potential and give back to the organizations that we run. And so kudos to the folks who are attending the webinar today because we all share that same purpose. Quick note here, there I am, Victor Dominguez. You can reach me all the time on Business Performance USA website. That's when I'm at my desk, but you can always email me and reach me. But mostly, let's talk about Milton, because he's the man today. Now, Milton Course is Chief Executive Officer of Evolution Training, and let me tell you a little about him so you can have some context as to who he is. Milton, most certainly, we've experienced, has a passion for education, which he knows from personal experience is transformative for people. That's why he's here today, is to share his knowledge. In pursuit of his passion and purpose to educate others, Milt founded Evolution Training and Consulting to help businesses develop their leaders to master the challenges of today's world. In addition, Milton was the Associate Professor of Business and Dean of Administration for Gloucester County College for a combined 15 years. Milt also works with businesses using his core competencies in business development, operational management, competitive strategies, strategic and tactical business planning, Salesforce development, communications, problem solving, decision making, and on. So basically, you can imagine he's a plug-in guy to an organization to help them grow rapidly and bring all employees along with that growth and success as well. Milton, people love Milton, we do, for his compassionate heart, his solid character, his professional demeanor, and his attitude. And sometimes he's got a competitive attitude, and we appreciate that too. You'll enjoy hearing from Milton. I know we always do. And just a couple of quick housekeeping thoughts here. We are all about answering questions, and we encourage our audience to be all about asking questions. So ask questions using the chat feature or the questions feature, whatever is most intuitive for you. The question feature obviously is just for that. You'll find that on your interface. And because of the diversity of our audience, ask us questions, and if we can't answer them immediately, we'll put them at the end of the webinar. And if we can't do it there, we can have a dialogue offline. And really, sometimes that's the best. You're always welcome to email me, victor@businessperformanceusa.org. And I supply my phone numbers in other situations. Just pick up the phone and talk to me, because we want the lessons today from Milton to be applicable and actionable for your organization. How can you move your organization forward? Without any further ado, let me pass the controls over to Milt here. Milt, are you getting your pop-up window?
I am. Hold on a second. I think I'm going to have to pull up. Hold on a second. Victor, I apologize for the delay, folks.
That's
Give
okay.
me 1 minute here, and we'll get everything where we need to get it.
Not a problem. I'll switch back to my screen for a second here and move on to the next title. So obviously what we're going to be talking about here shortly is the definition of leadership. And you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner that ask us questions. Those are just prompts that you can ask us those type of questions now or later. And this prompt is that in order to develop leadership in your organization, you're going to need to have a clear definition of what leadership is and how to identify it. That may seem really obvious, but I imagine if you put 10 people in the room and ask them the definition of leadership, you may get 10 different answers. And it really helps to have your organization come together on a single focused definition of what leadership is. Milton, should I transfer back to you?
I think we're all ready now, my friend.
Okay, let's do this again. I'm sending it over your way.
Okay. Bingo.
There you go. You're up.
Okay, outstanding. Well, hi everybody. And Victor, as always, I appreciate that warm introduction. As Victor so eloquently pointed out today, we're going to be talking about leadership, and really what are those 5 different roles that we find that high performance leaders occupy consistently. But to kind of get the webinar started today, I do want to give us a kind of a working definition of really what leadership is, so that we're at least operating from the exact same place. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to present you with a slide that kind of tells you what it isn't, because really definitions are a way of creating some clarity. So first I want to tell you clearly what it is not, and what we're not going to be talking about today anyway. We're not going to be talking about seniority, okay? It's not about how long you've been somewhere. We're not going to talk about position and or title. It's not about what your title is. Leadership, this vital element that is really kind of the engine that makes every organization go, has to be present at every level. So from the C-suite down to the front line, leadership is important. So I don't like to talk about it in terms of position or title. It's not really about any personal attribute that you may or may not have. It's not about you having this really warm and engaging personality or being a person who kind of lights up a room. That's fantastic, but it isn't really necessary. And fifth and finally here, I want to make sure that we're clear that leadership is not management. Now, management is an important and essential role that all leaders have to play. And kind of to get ahead of myself here a little bit, I'll let you know that management is one of the roles that every highly effective leader has to play, but there really are some significant and distinct differences. And I think that when we move to the next slide and we give you a working definition of really what leadership is, it'll become clear how leadership and management are different.
Thanks, Milton. Just a quick note. That last slide is really important for you because it can upset the apple cart. If you were to go to your senior executive team and say management, leadership isn't necessarily management or seniority, you might get pushback on that, just saying. So we're here to talk about how to introduce the type of change that is sometimes necessary to shift mindsets of what leadership is. Thanks, Milton.
Oh, absolutely. So here's my definition, or a working definition of really what leadership is about, right? And you'll see here, leadership is a process of influence which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. So I'd like to take a few moments, if you would, and bear with me, and kind of break that down into segments and kind of take a little bit of a deep dive so that we all are understanding exactly what we're talking about here. Now, leadership stems from social influence. You notice we said influence. It didn't mention anything about authority. It didn't mention anything about power. Right? It does require others, right? And that implies that those others need not necessarily be direct reports. So real leadership isn't simply about the people who have a duty to follow you, but those who want to follow you. You notice it didn't mention anything about personality traits, or attributes, or titles, or styles, right? To be considered leadership, it really is about this social influence leading to some kind of intended goal or outcome. So we have to have this vision of the future. So vision is something we're going to talk about. And I think like the final element of this definition that I would really like to bring to your attention, and really what separates what we're going to talk about today from leadership in the general sense, is that it's about maximizing the efforts of others. Okay? In other words, real leadership or transformational leadership or high performance leadership is really about engaging others so that they will give to you, to the organization, to the goal, that discretionary effort, the over and above what isn't necessarily required for them to keep their job, but is what is required if you're going to become a great and transformational organization. So that's my definition of leadership.
Thank you, Milt. Good stuff.
Okay, great. Now let's get on to really kind of what it is that we came here today to talk about, right? So what are these 5 roles? Well, they are manager, they are technician, they are trailblazer, there's a coach, and there's an architect. Now these aren't in any particular order right now, but we're going to go through each of these. And what we find is that at certain times, each one of these roles needs to be played by anyone who's in a leadership position. Once again, I don't care if you're in the C-suite, down to the front lines. These 5 things, these 5 essential elements are really what separate great leaders from the ordinary. So let's go through each one of them, okay? Well, the first one up is the trailblazer. Now, here I have a picture of Nikola Tesla. Most of you probably don't know who he is from his work, but you probably know his name from the motor company now that bears his last name, Tesla Motors. Their CEO, Elon Musk, he chose this gentleman as the namesake of the car. Now, what might you not know about Nikola Tesla? Well, he was a scientist. I think he was born in the mid-19th century. I think he lived up until the middle of the 20th century, roughly. But he was a scientist and a trailblazer in many, many, many fields. He has, believe it or not, over 300 patents to his name. Okay, and they run and they range in areas from physics to engineering and the like. Just about every scientific endeavor Nikola Tesla touched during his lifetime. Now, why is he representative of the trailblazer role as defined in organizational leadership? Well, what does a trailblazer do, right? This is where the vision comes from, right? They have a clear vision that they can articulate and share with other people, right? And typically this vision comes from taking a look at the organization. We're going to take a look at the environment and how those things are changing and what opportunities and or threats are out there because of this ever-changing world that we exist in. Right? Now, they're able to translate this vision, this grand thing, into objectives, into things that need to get accomplished. Right? They typically are great connectors. They connect both internally and externally to the organization. And they also take risk. Okay? And risk is, it's funny, so many businesses want to be safer. So many people want to do things in such a way that they think that they're going to be safe, and actually trying to be safe oftentimes can lead to your demise. So that trailblazer role encompasses that willingness and that desire to take chances, to take risk, which is fundamental to any organization's growth. So that's kind of what we're talking about as it relates to our trailblazer role.
Yep.
Next up,
no, just
yes,
a couple couple comments on Trailblazer just to round that out. Think of a primary role for a Trailblazer is to set a charter. In most project management, program management, founders understand what it is to create a charter. That's typically the role of a Trailblazer. It incorporates their vision. But also, when we're talking about these roles, there's no really one perfect role, and typically, this is my opinion, all of these leadership roles really are accentuated when they're within a multidisciplinary team. For instance, a Trailblazer can often get ahead, and sometimes too far ahead of the organization. They can make promises, if you will, or set expectations to the outside world, to stakeholders, that their team is challenged to fulfill. Think of an army advancing, getting too far out ahead of its supply lines. So the Trailblazer is best when they're supplemented with other leadership roles as well to augment and supplement, capture their strengths, but also pick up some of the challenges or weaknesses they may have as well. So there's no one perfect person. Trailblazer is critical, but they may need support, for instance.
Oh, listen, Victor, I could not agree with you more. You find that happens quite often. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you or anyone on the webinar ever read Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs, and it talked about how he, as a quintessential Trailblazer, oftentimes got too far out in front, and the folks who worked for him often said that he lived in his own, what they refer to as a reality distortion field. That he really would expect more from them oftentimes than they thought that they could deliver. But it's a delicate balance there, because the genius of a guy like a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk or any other number of trailblazing leaders is the idea that they will continue to push and prod and cajole us to get out of our comfort zones, to go places that we didn't think that we could go before. But I think you're absolutely right in as much as that there does have to be a balance there. Somebody needs to sometimes pull these folks in off of the ledge if we go too far that way. So.
Excellent statement. Quick housekeeping, Milt. We are getting some additional attendees, and thank you for joining us today on this Business Performance USA webinar. We always record our webinars. We make them available on demand on our website. So for the minutes you have missed, don't worry about it. You can make it up by watching it on demand, or you can always contact us. Thank you, Milt.
Okay, sure, absolutely. Well, our second role that we're going to talk about is that of a manager. Okay, now managers really focus in primarily, or let me put it this way, that hat, when you have that hat on, you're really primarily focusing in on processes and things. For instance, managers, they do a lot of planning, they schedule things. They direct resources to specific assignments. They're going to be tracking progress. They run meetings, they maintain discipline and order, things of that nature. Those are the things that managers do. And if you think back to just a minute ago when I gave you my definition of leadership, and we talked about the whole social influence thing, and really kind of coalescing people around a goal, you'll see a real stark contrast between that idea and kind of what I just articulated and described to you as really what a manager's role is, right? I think about, simply stated for me, I look at managing as things, right? We manage things. We lead people. People don't want to get managed. They want to get led, right? Think about it. We've never heard of a world manager. We've never heard of, a religious manager. People don't want to be managed. They want to be led. Now, but management, the overall scheme of creating a high-performance organization, is a vital role that every leader does need to play from time to time. But I just want to make sure we were clear kind of like how we differentiate those two things. You manage, for the most part, things, processes, and things of that nature. You lead people. So that's kind of what the management role is. It's a vital role, very, very important role. Any thoughts, comments there?
I have a couple of questions, but I think I'm going to save them for a little later on, Milton. Just keep things rolling along, but thank you.
Okay, sure thing, not a problem. Okay, our next up role is that of coach, and here you have I have a picture of Vince Lombardi. Any football fans who happen to be watching will know that the Super Bowl trophy is named after him. And for those of you who aren't football fans, he is probably one of the seminal figures in National Football League history. Phenomenal coach. But some of you don't know his backstory. Now, I'm from New Jersey. I still live here. As a matter of fact, that's kind of where I'm hosting this webinar from today. But Vince actually started his coaching career in high school, at high school here in Jersey called St. Cecilia's. And he was their football coach. And he turned St. Cecilia's into a powerhouse. He did such a fantastic job as St. Cecilia's football coach that when the basketball coach left, they asked him if he could coach basketball as well. Now, Vince knew nothing of basketball, never had played it, never had coached it. But they asked him, and he said yes. So he runs out to the library, and he gets a book by a James Naismith, who really kind of like the creator of basketball, to kind of like learn the rules of basketball, learn the game of basketball. And here's really the wonderful thing, or the brilliant part of Vince Lombardi. He was able to turn St. Cecilia's basketball team into a state champion. So here's a guy who never played the game, who never coached the game, takes over the team and turns them into a championship team. Okay, so you might wonder, what are the core skills that make a person be able to do something like that? What was it unique about Vince Lombardi, and what can we learn from him? Well, what are some of the keys to being a great coach? You know, some of the things I think that tie into this is the idea that they set standards for behavior and performance, right? They say, here's kind of how we're going to operate. Within the confines of the team, as Victor alluded to at the beginning of our discussion, when he talked about the whole charter of a team, and at some point during the webinar, if need be, we can kind of dig a little bit deeper into that area. But they empower people to make decisions and to solve problems. Okay? They create problem solvers. They don't want to have, they are not necessarily interested in becoming the answer person, all right? We're going to train you. We're going to teach you. We're going to give you access to information so that you can solve problems yourself. This is how we strengthen the organization, right? We help you grow as an individual, help you become the best you that you can be, because a coach understands that the only way to have a really successful team, the way to build a great team, is by building up great individuals with a shared purpose, focus, and goal. So that's what they do. And they also are your mentor. And they also, you know, we'll take a look at performance and we'll evaluate that from time to time. So those are the kind of key things that a coach does. Any thoughts there?
You know, Milt, I didn't know that history that he coached basketball, and to make the analogy or transfer that lesson into the business and nonprofit world, it can be a challenge for a leader to cross-pollinate throughout an entire organization, because that leader may be perceived as not having expertise in finance, IT, marketing, sales, whatever it is. And we sometimes get a little too hung up on our functional capabilities and don't really acknowledge in the business world transferable skills and what we all share in common. What we share in common is that people really do want to do their best. They want to be the best and understand and bring out their own, you know, God-given intrinsic talents and knowledge. And that's why a coach is important throughout an organization, and the culture needs to allow that coach or coaches to be liaisons between departments one of the most important things I think a coach can do is to break down silos and make them permeable and allow influence to go in and out of those silos. And sometimes they're challenged because, well, you know, a doctor may not have expertise in administration. Administration may not have expertise as a healthcare provider, but there are transferable skills there that can and need to be shared. And that's, I think, one of the most important roles of a coach, and culturally one of the biggest challenges they will face in being able to cross-pollinate throughout the entire organization. So just some quick thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, I think you're spot on there. One of the biggest challenges that anyone in leadership has is to be able to check their egos. And we'll talk about that, you know, a little bit later. I don't want to spend too much time here, but really a lot of great leaders learn how to check that ego so they can transcend some of those barriers, so that they can transform the organization. Because I think it's important that we accept our weaknesses, and that, you know, building a great team or coaching up a great team doesn't mean I have to be the best at every aspect. I just need to have a real clear vision about where it is we're going to go and what it's going to take to help build, you know, the members of that team up so that we can perform at that optimal level. So absolutely. Thank you so much for your insight there, Victor. I'm sorry.
Thanks. Real quick note again, we still have folks joining us, and welcome. In a sense, you haven't missed anything if you're just joining us now, because we are recording this webinar and we'll make it available online. So we want to make sure you get the greatest value from this. So whether you're joining us now or not, we'll make sure that we can connect all the dots for you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mill.
Okay, great. Thanks, Victor. Yeah, our next role that I'd like to talk about is that of an architect. You know, leaders who need to be organizational and social architects within their businesses. And by that I mean is that they have to look about how do we put all of these pieces together, in such a way that we can create an efficient operation, so that we can get rid of all of the unnecessary movement or the unnecessary tasks that are really sapping a lot of our energy, sapping a lot of our time, you know, a lot of our focus. So really, you know, architects are going to do some of the following kinds of things, right? They're going to standardize and document processes and procedures, okay? They're also going to try to align our systems to our strategies and our vision, so that what it is that we say that we're trying to do, whatever that vision is that we're trying to accomplish, that our day-to-day operations, those day-to-day tasks, actually are in support of that, so that we get that synergy and alignment. And they also will challenge practices that aren't consistent with our core philosophy. In other words, if we're doing things that don't make sense, they're also willing to pare some of that stuff away. They'll reinforce those things, those positive cultural norms, those things that kind of are drivers of our success. Okay, and they're constantly looking for new and better and more effective and efficient ways to either run a process and or to organize people around that process. To get back to Victor's point a little bit earlier about the silos, oftentimes we create organizations whose architecture is really linear along task. Right? We're really good. For instance, we'll have, like I said, a finance department, we'll have a marketing department, and we'll have a production facility, and we'll have, you know, engineering, and so on and so forth. Versus taking a look at, okay, what is our core business? What's the product or that we're trying to create, and create an architecture or an organizational structure that's supporting of that process, so that process gets done as effectively and efficiently as it possibly can. So that's really kind of the architect's role, right? We have the vision, and then they're going to create the mechanics, shall we say, so that that mission can be implementable as smoothly and as concisely as possible.
Yeah, I agree, Milt. I think the architect leader is the best friend of the trailblazer personality type or role model for leadership. Trailblazers need architects to put the details together, to build the platform, to create the structure and the systems and the entire enterprise environment where the Trailblazers' vision is fulfilled. And that's how all of these roles interconnect and intertwine. You know, coach and architects need coaches because coaches is the relationship person, and processes and platforms, procedures and systems are absolutely needed, but it's that will of the individual to make it succeed where the coach plays in too. So you hit on my three key roles: architect, trailblazer, architect, and coach. Thanks, Milt.
Oh, absolutely. And once again, Victor, I couldn't agree more. You're right. They really are all supportive of each other. They really do create this cohesive web that makes the organization go. Absolutely correct. Okay, and our fifth and our final role that all great leaders have to play, from time to time, we are going to be a technician. And in this role, we're kind of look at this and say, okay, these are the folks who really have a high degree of technical proficiency. So if for instance, we're talking about an IT solutions company, right? This might go to how well do you write code or things of that nature, right? So they're going to be good at that. So they're sought after for a unique expertise, Typically, technicians are people who are really, really good at diagnosing problems using their analytical skills, right? Because of their technical proficiency, they understand process. They understand what it is that we do or how to build that widget. And if there's a problem, they can troubleshoot it in a way that maybe someone who has a less technical proficiency can't. But typically, people who like to put out fires and are quick decision makers. Now, the one thing I'll say about this particular role is while we need leadership at every level of the organization, what you'll see is depending on where you are in the organization hierarchy, that these roles or the proportion of the time you play certain roles will vary. I would suggest probably the closer you are to the front lines, the more heavily skilled you might need to be as a technician. Conversely, the higher up the organizational hierarchy you go, those technical skills become less and less a requirement. To go back and talk about Steve Jobs again real briefly, those of you, I think probably everybody on the call knows who he was. He's the legendary entrepreneur who started Apple in his parents' garage with his buddy Steve, I think it's Wozniak, I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
That's right.
And took it to it's transcended business. It's almost like this cultural icon that it is today. But believe it or not, Steve couldn't write code. He was not particularly technically proficient. But given his role in Apple, that really wasn't a necessity for him. But anyway, so technician, that's kind of like the final role that I wanted to share with you today. So those are our 5 roles.
Milton, that's good. Just to recap for the folks, I group these in manager, technician, trailblazer, coach, architect, and we want to help our audience identify their own skill sets in these roles and the skill sets of their staff and peers. For a technician, look for the people that are very highly competent, strong skill sets which lead to greater capabilities for the company. These people are, like you said, Milt, typically the go-to person to solve something or get Jane to do it, get Joe to do it, because they know they can do that. There's always strengths and weaknesses, and look for the technician, a trait which is often or common, but not always, because I have to be careful with setting rules that are universally true, because that's rarely the case. But Technicians may display a sense of, get out of my way, leave me alone, I'm going to do it on myself. And they have the attitude of, if it's going to get done right, I need to do it myself. So in a sense, they're very different from trailblazers, but in coaches. Coaches are all about relationships. Technicians are all about the details and tend to keep their nose buried and are not classically the ones that are developing relationships. So when you're building a leadership team, and that team could be anywhere. It could be in your customer service group. It could be in any part of the department. Look for these traits within your group. We'll keep moving along. Thanks, Mil.
Okay, fantastic. And like I said, let's put it all together. And the question that you need to ask yourself, and kind of as we go through this, I'm going to give you a 10,000-foot view of each one of these roles again, and I'd ask you to think about it and say, you know, how much of your time, draw yourself a little circle and kind of think about that circle and divide it up amongst those roles. And how are you spending your time? How much of your time do you spend being a manager? In other words, where you're focused in on process, right? About, you know, resource allocation and things of that nature. How much of your time are you spending as a technician, right? And we just talked, you know, in some depth and detail about that technician role. And in that role, it's like, how much of the time are you spending troubleshooting, actually doing the work of the organization? Now, as Victor mentioned earlier, it can and oftentimes is a necessary evil. But if, and I think he also mentioned, which I could not agree with more when he said it, the idea that oftentimes technicians tend to be the kind of, if you want something done right, you need to do it yourself type of personality. We need to be careful about that and balance it, because our ultimate goal is to build an organization that will last, build an organization whose bandwidth continually grows. And to do that, we have to coach up and train other people. So we had a manager, we have technician, trailblazer. How much of the time are you focused in on the future, what's next, how your environment is changing? You know, there's an old adage, I don't know if you've ever heard this one before, but it kind of goes this way: fish notice the water last. Right? It's the last thing they notice because they're in it all the time. But without it, they couldn't survive. So as a trailblazer, as we're working in our business, trailblazers kind of work on the business, right? They're going to be up on the balcony. They're going to be at that 10,000-foot level. They're going to be taking a look at what's happening so that they notice the water. They'll notice what are some of the changes that are happening in the environment and how can we stay on top of those things. So how much of the time as a leader do you spend doing those things? How much of the time do you spend as a coach building your people? Building your people. If you recall back to our definition at the very, very beginning, right? We said leadership is about creating social influence, creating that vision, and getting people on board. Well, as a coach, it's about building those people and creating the culture and all that kind of good stuff. So how much of your time on a daily basis are you spending doing those things? And finally, the architect. How much of your time do you spend thinking about, you know, is the organization, is my team, is my group, is my shift, are they doing things the most efficient and effective way so that we can maximize the return on our efforts? And that's the role, that's the role that an architect plays. So those are our 5 roles. You know, jot down the notes and say, okay, how am I doing as it relates to these 5 roles? And then, you know, we're going to take a look and say, well, how do high performance leaders in organizations that are performing well above the norm, well above the average, what do they spend the vast majority of their time doing? And what you'll find is there is a disproportionate weighting towards the 3 areas in green, kind of appropriate given that this is St. Patrick's Day. That is green. That's a nice touch there, Victor.
I'm here for you, man.
But, you know, what we find is that high-performing leaders spend the vast majority of their times focusing in on the three areas that Victor mentioned earlier that he's passionate about trailblazing, about what's the next thing. How can we transform this organization? What's going to be the next iteration? How are we going to look next? They spend a lot of their time coaching up their employees, helping them grow, helping them, if you remember back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, helping them self-actualize. Because what we find is happy and successful people and people feel good about themselves and connected are going to give us that discretionary effort so that we can grow and become all that we can become. And third and finally, how do we build an organization, okay, that is efficient and effective? And this is so vitally important, especially as your organization begins to grow. There's so many things that happen in an organization almost organically when it's small. But as you grow, as you become more and more successful, you need to create infrastructure to ensure that things that you took for granted, years ago, months ago, are happening now. So those are the 5 roles. Like I said, I would suggest if you're trying to move your organization, or you're trying from typical performance to high performance, but if you're trying to move from just being an average leader to a high performance leader, that you focus on those 3: architect role, the coach role, and the trailblazer role. Like I said, doesn't mean we don't pay attention to being a manager, we don't pay attention to being a technician, but those are really the keys that we found to high performance.
Excellent, Milt. Thank you very much. Milt, can you jump back to that last slide for a second?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We are 45 minutes into this, and we will be wrapping up soon. I just want to make a couple of notes on this graphic as well for our audience, and loop back to identifying yourself among these roles. And granted, and you may be a little of this and some of that. So look for that possibilities. Also, you want to look for these character traits, skill sets within your team as well. Now, in addition, when you look at this graphic, you've got the blue portions and the green portions. This graphic, it's not implied in the visual, but can also be a reference to the stage or evolution of your organization. Blue tends to be weighted in conventional organizations, the way things have been done in management for the past 100, 200, 300 years, frankly, where managers believe that they need to be very controlling. They need to compile data, generate reports. They need to be the problem solver. They need to be the bypass. And what managers in the old conventional framework typically do is create a bottleneck with themselves, compiling and assessing information and data, and then taking that data into meetings and processing it and meeting with other people, and then coming back with a solution to give to their folks. Really is old school. It's the contemporary managers allow their staff to solve their own problems, allow their staff to gather their own data and analyze their own data and test new solutions and problem solve and get to the root issues. That frees up the manager to reassign the new capacity, because when you teach your teams how to solve their own problems, you are going to generate greater capacity in your organization. So the role of the manager really needs to shift in the mindset for more contemporary organizations. And the technician of the mindset, if I want it done right, I need to do it myself, really isn't the coaching mentality. The technician who has that expertise has intrinsic knowledge which is embedded in their head, but it's difficult to transfer to other people. You need the coach to work with transitions to get that knowledge and experience out of that individual's heads and share it and cross-train and cross-pollinate and create more people with greater technique, more expertise. The problem with technicians is sometimes they're expert at workaround solutions, and we see this in healthcare all the time. People are celebrated for workaround solutions. Well, the technician knows how to get things done because he just knows where the hidden drawers are and the buttons to push, and that's why they're a go-to person. That go-to person tends to like having that status. But the truth is, an organization that needs to grow rapidly and sustainably can't afford to have all the expertise tied up in the technician. You got to move it out, and that's why this really is a green dominant chart. The blue does, of course, come into that environment, and you need managers, you need that bubble around the team to provide the structure and organization. But the heart of the matter is where the real team growth lies is in those four, is in the bottom three, I mean, and then moving the manager and technician into that same mindset. So that's a lot to comprehend, but again, this is why we ask you to ask us, reach out to us. And I just got a comment, and it's quite true. Without the blue, the green can't be nurtured. You really do need both. So, Milt, I'll turn it back over to you. Next slide.
Okay, sure, not a problem, Vic. I think we've come to the end of our presentation at this point. Like I said, I've enjoyed my time with you today. I hope that you found it thought-provoking and helpful. And at this point, I'd like to open it up, and if there are any questions that either myself or Victor could answer, we'd be more than willing to take them at this time.
Okay, Milt, let me jump over. I have a lot of comments and a lot of questions. I'm going to go back because we had to skip through some of them. Way in the beginning, we're talking about the process of influence, and that's certainly in regards to the definition of the leader. Question, does a social process always move towards achieving a goal? So that's an interesting question. A social process, let's see if I can break this down in my own head. Social process or culture, or the way people behave, interact, the way they're accountable and transparent, always move towards achieving a goal. I would say there's no question about it. What do you say, Milt, about social processes being able to move towards a goal and achieving goals?
Okay, here's what I would say. I would say that all goals that get achieved really come out of that social process, that ability to connect and drive and to get people to give you, like I mentioned earlier, their discretionary effort. I think it's a necessary part of the process, but I also don't want us to forget that part of the definition that really talked about. If you look back at that definition, we talked about the achievement of a goal. In other words, what is vital to make that social engine work is an articulable, clear, and concise vision that people rally around. If you think about, and I don't want to spend too much time answering this question because there may be others, but at any rate, if one of the greatest leaders, I think, social leaders of the last 50, of the last 100 years, Martin Luther King Jr., right, created this social movement. That social movement was created around a clear, articulable vision. He referred to it as his dream. I have a dream. And the point is that people weren't following him. The people connected to the vision. That's what drove it. So, yeah, I think those two things are vitally important.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, I'm just checking questions and whatnot. Cynthia in our audience made a great comment. She had heard it said that trailblazers, architects, coaches actually lead people, and managers and technicians manage things. And that's a very subtle but really critically important distinction. Sometimes people get a little too hung up in managing personalities and getting their head too buried in managing things. So, we're talking about leadership today. Leadership is about influence. It is about the culture, the social process, and that's leading people forward. And I think we need to throw in, when you formulate your own definition of leadership, because I believe that is essential within your organization, if your entire company doesn't understand the definition of leadership, you really won't be able to fully maximize its power. And you need to work in the answer of why. And Milton, you've done an entire webinar on the question of why. why does this company exist? Why do we serve our customers? What is our noble cause? Why do we get up in the morning and come to work? The why question needs to be worked in there too. I do have another question here. Does high performance through maximizing the efforts of others always require engaged social groups? So the subject here is engaged social groups. Is that the way to get high performance by maximizing the efforts of others? There's no question that is true. Every business organization, whether you're a nonprofit or whoever, you're serving customers, you're serving stakeholders, constituents, and you need high performance out of your group. The reason you need high performance is obvious for growth and profit and whatnot, but the trailblazers out there pushing forward, that really challenges the architect who is designing resources, capital resources, human resources to keep up with the vision of the trailblazer, meaning you need to continually be asking more out of your folks, your staff, more and more and more, and we see companies do that in burning people out. So the question here of engaged social groups is key to it, because that's engaged social group is our teams, okay? It is culture. It is multidisciplinary teams coming together. It is departments breaking down silos and working together and engaging solutions and problems together. And that is why that's key to leadership. You're not going to find that through authority. You'll only find that through influence, positive influence. Milt, I know I just took off on a tangent there, but any comments on that?
No, listen. I think that you're spot on. I just to reiterate or reinforce what you just said is that great teams or great organizations are always greater than the sum of their parts. In other words, to reach the pinnacle of our ability as an organization, as a team, we need all hands on deck. Everybody has to be contributing all that they have, and the only way that you do that is when people are fully engaged, and like I said, you maximize their efforts. You get their discretionary efforts. You get the extra. So that's really all I have to add. It's in complete support of what you said. There's nothing that you said I would disagree with even a little bit. I think you're absolutely spot on. But that really is the key. You have to engage. The best organizations are organizations where people are fully engaged and believe in it. And to get back to that whole why thing, are there about that. In other words, they believe in the vision. It's not so much about the person. They believe in the vision. You get that kind of buy-in, literally the sky is the limit.
Beautiful stuff. Milt, why don't you take us to the next slide and we'll wrap this thing up for our audience.
Absolutely. Okay.
Simple enough. The question here for our audience, and again, we appreciate your the dozens of people that attended today. Thank you very much. The question for me is, if I were you, if I were in the audience, it's like, okay, great. Where do I begin? How do I really transfer leadership into results? The webinar today, again, was to help you identify leadership traits and the categories of them, from manager, technician, architect, coach, and trailblazer. What do you see in you and what do you see in your staff? How do you assess that? These are the questions we're here to help you find the answers to. That's why we say ask us, and you can send me an email, victor@businessperformanceusa.org. Milton has his email in this address, is accessible too. You can just simply send an email to me and I'll get it to Milton. But as always, we are a large group of executive volunteers that help people with their career development and organizational development on a pro bono basis. We simply believe we are called to give back to our communities, and that's why when you ask us a question, we'll find the right person for you to answer. So let's talk one-on-one. Let's correspond. Let's pick up the phone. Let's send emails and join us on Business Performance USA. And you can ask us questions. How do I get started? How do I find these leadership traits in my team? How do we translate leadership to getting results as a high-performance organization? Let's make the last 57 minutes valuable for you and actionable for you, and help your organization grow and serve all your stakeholders. Let's make leadership an intrinsic part of your organization. And critically, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, leadership occurs everywhere within your organization, from the janitor on up, and I truly believe that, and ask us how you can make that happen for you. Milt, any last thoughts?
No, Vic, I think that, Victor, you said it well. Like I said, we're here to help. Everybody at Business Performance USA and Evolution Management Training and Consulting are really passionate about what we do. I can speak for the folks at BP USA. They're fantastic people. Please reach out. We are truly looking to help you reach your goals. So looking forward to hearing from you, and it was a pleasure sharing this hour with you.
Thanks, Milt. Sorry, I'm just clicking around. We do have a couple other questions. I apologize. I will reach out because I have a record of who is asking questions. I will reach out to you, look for my email, or even a phone call if I have your phone number. We're going to wrap up. Thank you again. We are Business Performance USA. We're truly here to serve you. Milt, always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you at the next time. Let's get together coast to coast. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.